This Impact Wrestling review was brought to you by 5 Hour Energy. Try it, and the next time TNA want you to buy a big pay-per-view, they won't actually forget to announce the full card on the go-home show. If you look back on the history of TNA, something they've often had a problem with over the years has been good go-home shows, really delivering that hard sell on the last Thursday before pay-per-view Sunday. I remember a number of them pretty early on when you wouldn't even have known there was a pay-per-view on Sunday from how unconcerned they seemed about it. And yeah, the TV show has always been their main focus, and it probably always will be, but I never understood why the hype for so many pay-per-views got shoved into the back seat in favor of hyping up the next Impact show when, ideally, you should be able to do both. But TNA has gotten better about this as time's gone on. Dropping a bunch of the pay-per-views helped a lot. They still have good go-home shows and bad, but I'm happy to say this is one of the good ones. They managed to devote a pretty fair amount of time to each storyline, and almost every match had some decent final hype. At least, almost every match that was actually announced. More on that later. You have to be impressed with what TNA has done with this Samuel Shaw character. In just a few appearances, he's turned into one of the more talked about people on this show right now. His new wrestling style really does need to be tweaked, though. They've taken a fast-paced, athletic, high-flying dude and made him work this really slow, grounded, methodical style, and I just don't think it works for this particular wrestler. He really needs to pick up the pace. So far, I've found his matches to be pretty dull affairs, if I'm being honest. On the plus side, though, the character is progressing nicely. His mannerisms and facial expressions are very creepy. If that creepy bastard chant doesn't catch on, it won't be his fault. And I do like this feud with him and Anderson. Anderson's got the big, over-the-top persona, whereas with Shaw, I think they're going for a complete lack of emotion. So you pit those two against each other, and I'm liking the dynamic so far. And they actually devoted a surprising amount of time to this here, with Shaw stalking Christy Hemme backstage all night. Anderson in the wig was a little silly, but he's the kind of character that can pull that off. And even though this match only has, 2 weeks of build-up, I'm suddenly pretty interested to see where they go with it. More really good stuff with EC3 and Kurt Angle this week. I thought EC3 struck a good balance between funny and serious, going from this really good semi-comedic promo to a pretty vicious beatdown on Angle's knee. This was something we really needed to get from the EC3 character, because up until recently, fans have had plenty of reason to want to see him get beat, but not a lot of reason to think he's much of a threat to Kurt Angle in a steel cage. But TNA gave him a dangerous streak here, injuring the knee a couple weeks ago and then attacking it again here. They're slowly evolving him beyond that pampered rich kid act into somebody that you probably shouldn't underestimate. And even though I'm not 100% sure he's going to go over Angle on Sunday, after this, he looks like he's got a much better chance than he did before. And by the way, I totally heard something pop too when he destroyed Angle's knee. And quite frankly, Kurt Angle got exactly what he deserved. It served him right for not appreciating the wonderful contribution that wrestling's greatest hero made to his Hall of Fame induction ceremony. You had that beating coming and you know it, Kurt Angle. And when you're ready to apologize for your lack of respect, the new American icon of wrestling will be waiting for you in the steel cage. And personally, I can't wait to see this one. Oh, crap! Though it hurts to say this, the low point of this show for me was the Knockouts match. I just didn't think this was very good or very interesting at all. Once again, it's Gail Kim versus ODB and Velvet Sky and Madison Rayne, who's defending the title at Lockdown, though you wouldn't know it by watching this. And you can throw Lady Tapa and Alpha Female in there, but we all know how this story goes, and they're not going to do anything new with it at this point. These characters are not drawing me in anymore. I don't care about Gale versus Madison at Lockdown. I don't think the match is going to be anything special. I don't even really care who leaves Miami with the Knockouts title at this point. That's the really sad thing. It's just the same stuff, the same feuds and the same matches over and over and over again, and I just can't drum up any excitement for it. Christy Hemme said new Knockouts were coming. Dixie Carter and Dave Lagana both said that a big shakeup in the Knockout division was about to happen. I sincerely hope that this happens either at Lockdown or immediately after Lockdown, because if it doesn't, then it's just going to be more of the same old stuff. And I'm sorry, but I've had my fill of that.
Oh, my brother, testify!
The match ends with Velvet Sky pinning Alpha Female. Oh my God. Kiss your badass cred goodbye, Alpha. Ain't no getting this woman over as a monster after that. Jesus Christ.
Oh, you were not aware of this?
Anyway, assuming the UK tour was an extended tryout period for Alpha, then if it was up to me, I would pass on her. That's 3 matches in a row where she is just not impressed. And that's strange because I've seen Alpha have good matches. I know she can do better than this, but something about her style just hasn't been translating. So I really don't see any point in bringing her back now. They gave her a shot, she didn't work out, so send her on her way and keep looking. If TNA want a big woman who sucks in the ring, they have Lady Tapa for that.
Your posterior better contact someone at once.
It was kind of weird that the Velvet Saban angle overshadowed the Knockouts title feud here. Not the call I would have made, but I doubt anyone really cares that much about Gale versus Madison in the first place. At any rate, I think the time has definitely come to put this storyline to bed. They're not really covering any new ground here. If the writers aren't willing to put Alpha or whatever woman Saban digs up next over Velvet in some kind of legitimate way, then this has no mileage in it. And I don't see how an extended intergender feud does anything for Saban or Velvet. So just let that be the end of it. Saban humiliated Velvet, Velvet got a measure of revenge. Let's just get them away from each other now and move them on to different things.
And if you're not down with that, we have 2 words for you. You're welcome!
And another thing. It's getting really damn annoying when they do all this stupid. I was really hoping that we were done with blatantly interrupting the show, taking the focus off the show just to squeeze in these superfluous Bellator plugs. It's annoying enough when they do them during the matches, but when they have Mike Tenay dub them in afterward with ADR or something, it just sounds terrible. How does that even happen? Aren't they post-producing the commentary these days anyway? TNA, you've got to find a better way to do this, because quite frankly, it makes the audio sound like it was edited by a monkey. I mean, is a little attention to detail really too much to ask? Don't ever do that again! Then we had our final hype for Gunner versus James Storm, and unfortunately, this segment could have been better in my opinion. Gunner has been pretty solid on the mic recently, but here he just seemed to get lost. He was kind of stumbling over his words a little bit, was having some trouble making his point. James Storm was his usual awesome self on the microphone, though. I think this heel turn was exactly what Storm needed. His character feels refreshed. He's transitioning back into that bad guy role effortlessly. Gunner, meanwhile, looks like he's still finding his way. And while Gunner has made some progress recently, based on this segment, he's still got some work to do. But overall, I think this feud has been built up great, and even though Gunner was pretty shaky here, I'm really looking forward to their match on Sunday. I guess you had to expect Lethal Lockdown to get the lion's share of the attention this week. That's been the way it goes because TNA just love their power struggle storylines, but it was time well spent for the most part. The opening promo was serviceable, but not great. Wasn't bad, but it was a little too cookie cutter for me. It felt a lot like these segments WWE does all the time, where one guy gets on the mic, but he's interrupted by another guy coming out, who then gets interrupted by someone else coming out, and so on and so on. It just felt really paint by numbers. Also, the Jeff Hardy announcement was kind of predictable. I think most people just assumed he was going to be on MVP's team. So, nothing really out of the ordinary here, but at least they got their point across well. And the following match was pretty good too. I like the end result. I think the heels really needed something like that to look strong because, well, let's face it, they were already at a big perceived disadvantage with the bromance making up half their team.
You guys suck.
If you look at all the people in Lethal Lockdown, it's pretty obvious who's completely out of place here. The bromance being in this match makes no damn sense whatsoever. They are booked like a joke. That's the way everyone views them. That's why Aries just rolled his eyes and laughed when Robbie started talking in the opener. And then winning the tag titles back doesn't change anything. And holy shit, what the hell was that about? A title change at a house show isn't going to create any interest in your live events if you barely acknowledge it and then switch the belts right back at a one-night-only show a week later. So what was the point of this? Their first title reign was so worthless. What did it even really accomplish in the long run anyway?
Nothing! Absolutely nothing!
So, yeah, by all means, let's just give them the titles right back. Because that won't be pointless or redundant or a big waste of time or anything. That aside, the booking of this match was really interesting. To the surprise of no one, Robbie gets taken out quickly, proving to be completely inconsequential. And that was great because it made more time for the Wet Dream Team to be awesome as only they can. Good psychology here, with Aries proving himself to be the difference maker like he said he was. Later on, MVP actually gets pinned by Bobby Roode for the second time in 2 weeks. Really classy of MVP to let Roode do that. Wow. So then it comes down to Davey Richards. Not the ex-WWE guy, mind you, but Davey Richards as the last man on the face team that Roode and Aries just can't seem to put away. A couple of years ago, this kind of thing would have been unheard of, and more than likely you'd see MVP facing 3-1 odds and then beat all the heels by himself. Maybe things really are changing in this company now. Holy shit.
Yes!
The finish here was kind of screwy, though. Aries gets himself DQ'd with a chair shot. Okay. But if Davey couldn't continue at that point, then shouldn't Roode have just won the match right there? I mean, to stop the match only to restart the match an hour later, that felt awfully Russo-rific to me. But I'm sure the IWC didn't care about that. They were too busy reaching for the nearest bottle of liquid soap and lubing themselves up real good because, oh my god, that meant that Davey Richards was the main event. Alright, I joke, but this was actually really well done in my opinion. They cut back to Davey a bunch of times throughout the night, stressing what a crucial role he was in. They did a lot to generate sympathy for him and put him over as a tough son of a bitch that Roode still had a lot of trouble with despite the shoulder injury. The match was really good. Roode wins and gets the main advantage for Lethal Lockdown as he really needed to. But I thought Davey Richards gained a lot from this, even in defeat. And it set up a great potential comeback story for him this Sunday if they want to go that route. When I look back at the build-up to Magnus versus Samoa Joe, I feel like it's been good, but something was missing. What was missing was stuff like this confrontation they had to close the show. This is what I've been wanting to see from these guys. Promos, using their history to build up the heat between them. And these characters have been through a lot together over the last couple of years. They'd be stupid not to play that up, which they really hadn't been doing so far for some reason. Milking the history between them makes this rivalry much more compelling, and there was a lot of good stuff to draw from that they still didn't get a chance to touch on here, but for what they did, I thought this was really damn good. And whether you like the paper champion gimmick or not, they have used it to create a situation here where Magnus really looks like he's about to lose the title. He's not getting the help from Dixie. Joe seems to have his number, which is why I think that somehow Magnus needs to retain the title on Sunday, especially if Team MVP wins Lethal Lockdown, which I expect they will. A great closing segment with Joe and Magnus. I just wish we'd gotten more stuff like this from them over the last few weeks. A pretty strong go-home show here. There were some good matches, good promos, most of the hype was solid, they budgeted their time well, and really put a lot of focus on building up every single match for this Sunday in some way, shape, or form. Or maybe not. Really? You didn't have all the matches announced? You couldn't devote 60 seconds to running down the full card rather than just part of the card at some point during this 2-hour broadcast? How in the blue hell do you forget a thing like that? You couldn't bother to tell us who Tiger Uno is going to face, or spare even one mention of the Great Muta and Saya Sanada, who, by the way, is your new X Division champion? So at Lockdown, you're just going to pull Bad Influence and Chris Sabin versus Muta Sanada and Nakanui out of your ass and hope the fans in attendance aren't like, where the fuck did this match come from? TNA, this is Bush League stuff. You should know better than this. Announcing the matches on Twitter over the weekend is not enough. Just saying. That brain fart notwithstanding, I'm excited for this pay-per-view, I really am. Most of the matches have been built up well, and this is probably one of the best Lockdown cards we've had in several years. So enjoy that, and I'll see you afterward. Over. Out.